Oh, look, I'm already here for 30 seconds and I've tripped over the rug. Good going. Classy, classy. Hi, everyone. How you doing? All right? Still got some life in you? Good. Don't lie. I know that's not true. So listen, I don't know how many of you work for brands or companies or agencies or consultancies, but those who do, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because with the lights, it wouldn't make any difference. I can't see a thing. But for those of you do, you probably know this scenario where in the recent kind of months you've been in a meeting with your client or briefing your agencies, and the client has gone, oh, this sustainability thing, it's getting really important. We really need to get out in front of this. We need to communicate. We need a marketing strategy. Who of you know anything about sustainability? And every single agency in the room, a bit like the seagulls from Finding Nemo, go, me, 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 whether they know anything or not about it. We're at a point in time where sustainability, a little bit like social media 10 years ago, has reached a tipping point where it's becoming very, very important. And that's why, that's a kind of a broad way of saying what Sustainly is about. Sustainly, founded about a year ago, and it's a knowledge platform. It's a knowledge membership-based platform connecting companies with agencies, consultancies, and brands. And essentially, we create a lot of case studies and a lot of reports all around the communication and marketing of sustainability. We got 1,200 case studies in there, growing by 5 to 10 a week. And they're all focused on what I would argue to you guys are the 4 pillars of successful communication around sustainability: understanding the issues, understanding the risk, the innovation, and the storytelling. Too many people want to go out there and tell the story without understanding everything that goes around it, and that's where you get greenwashing, or perhaps we could call it purpose washing, as we're getting quite a lot of sometimes. So why? Why this need? Well, look, companies today face a dual challenge. You've seen it over the last day and a half. You know all the things we're talking about. I take a fairly kind of glib, simple view of these things, so you're not going to get any of the deep stuff from me. But the first thing is the world is changing. Urbanization, climate change, resources. I knew I was presenting to a lot of millennials, so I did it all in Lego, because young people like Lego. No? Did I get that bit wrong? All right, well, never mind. After that last workshop, I realized maybe I was wrong demographic. The world is changing physically around us. But consumers are changing too, as we know. We've heard about it. But in a nutshell, what's happening, right? In the old days, we know that companies had power. Can I just make a point now? I had to look really hard to find a Lego version of Moses, and I just thought a little bit of kudos for that. Anyway. Oh, thank you. No, too much. You obviously all want to go home at this point. The point being is today, though, companies don't have that power, that from on high, putting down this is how it's going to be. I'm talking about advertising and marketing as it used to be done. Today, we are all more connected and more informed than we ever were before. And that means, in terms of accountability, transparency, as we like to say it, authenticity, that social media supercharges reactions and scandals. I also had to look quite hard for a Lego Volkswagen as well, but there you go. Shaming companies has become the norm. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book called #Fail, the 50 Greatest Social Media Screw-Ups, that looked at the history of how social media had brought reputation and brought scandals and elevated them. At that point, there was an exponential rise in the number of reputational issues based around social media, and it's growing time and time again, whether it's BP, VW, FedEx, Kit Kat, Johnson's Baby, Shell, and Lego. Shouldn't have done it in Lego, should I? So the point being is that if we're all more accountable, if we all as consumers and real people have more information than we ever had before, if because of that we are holding companies and brands' feet to the fire when they get things wrong. When making purchasing decisions on our mobiles, in shops and stores, not just based on price, but on supply chain, on sourcing, on our suspicion and our desire that what we buy is good and going to be good for us. And if we have suspicions about the way that companies are behaving, and if those suspicions are played out by what we see and what is shared with us through social media in our increasingly myopic channels of friends reassuring ourselves about the same things, then how do companies rebuild trust to stay relevant? Well, as I said, you hear all these words of authenticity, these buzzwords, community. First rule of doing a presentation, don't try and put white type on a yellow Lego. Just for anyone else doing a Lego presentation out there, it doesn't really read very well. Transparency, there's an unintended joke there, obviously. All of these are buzzwords, right? All of these the world of marketing and comms likes to throw around. Purpose, another one, and essentially what we're looking for is that they are all going on a quest for this thing called purpose. They're on their silver stallion. They're going over there. What do I stand for? What is this purpose thing that we're doing? Well, I would argue to you that in this world of changing climate, of fewer access to resources, of a changing consumer more informed, that as they go on a search for quest for purpose, what they're really looking for is sustainability. And that is what can help them reestablish that relationship that they crave with their customers and consumers. Here's the good news. Social media can help provide a brand new audience, a much wider audience than maybe executives, professionals in the sustainability field used to be able to talk to. Used to be a fairly kind of structured set of stakeholders who sustainability would talk to. But no, that's changed because social media, and we've heard it a little in the workshop, is making people far more interested, connected to these issues, and caring about it. Bad news. Consumers don't have a clue what you mean by sustainability. Especially the hippie guy there. And the guy in his pajamas. Sustain a what? And the problem isn't that they don't understand the principles. The problem isn't that they don't get the real issues. It's the jargon that we choose to use to communicate, the business speak. And within that, sustainability has become muddled and muddied. We need to talk without jargon. We need to talk about sustainability in its core, visceral, emotional, connected elements to the way we live our lives always. We need to talk about a safe home, about trusted products, friends, health, community, nature, family, security. All of these are fundamentally tied to the sustainability problems and initiatives that major companies and brands are trying to solve. And they're not being disingenuous. They definitely want to be out there trying to solve it. Sometimes because they are leading through system change. Sometimes because they have their feet held to the fire by angry consumer groups. Sometimes because they know that unless they act more sustainably, unless they come up with more sustainable products, they will not have a market in 5-10 years. And yet, in the majority of cases, consumers are still having a harder time getting to that. So, if we're going to do it right, if brands and companies are going to actually communicate sustainability without all the jargon in a good way, I would suggest that there are 3 key questions that they need and you need to ask yourselves to get this working properly. Number 1, what does your audience really care about? Number 2, what do you as a company or a brand stand for? It's that purpose bit, okay? And what have you got to say that meets the interest of that audience? And third, and this is really important in a connected, mobile, social, blah-de-blah, whatever you want to call it, information landscape we live in, how and where does that audience, i.e. your consumers, like to get their information? Because they are picking and choosing based on channel, based on type of content, exactly where they go and what they do. So, let's do 10 quick lessons about communicating sustainability that I have dragged out of the whole kind of knowledge platform and case studies that we develop, and out of this piece of research that we do each year called the Social Media Sustainability Index, that looks at 450 global companies across all sectors and looks at how they communicate sustainability using online and social channels. And I've tried to distill them into 10 lessons. It's not the whole kind of Moses theme again, it's just kind of how it went. Number one, this is not in reverse order either, but this is just how it goes. Listen and learn. This is McDonald's global campaign around answering the questions consumers have about what goes into their food. It is a reactive, and was a reactive campaign based on McDonald's losing a huge amount of market share to so-called healthy, sustainable fast food franchises like Chipotle, but they had their own problems, as well as other up-and-coming ones that were putting provenance and were putting sourcing and were putting taste as a selling point, and McDonald's was losing a lot of business around it. McDonald's also coming on the back of some rather disastrous Twitter marketing with the hashtag #McDStories event that happened a couple of years ago, where it did a Twitter campaign where it went out and said, "Tell us what you think about McDonald's," using hashtag #McTwitter. And everyone did say what they thought about McDonald's, and it wasn't terribly pleasant. Some of it was really nice, some of it wasn't. McDonald's forgetting at that point that if you ask the community what they think, they're going to tell you whether you like it or not. What McDonald's did is they listened and they learned, and they came out with this campaign where they basically created a lot of real-time question and answers by getting experts from within the business, of different parts of the business within McDonald's, to go and answer people's questions in real time on Facebook and on other mediums. So if you had a question about, are Chicken McNuggets really made with pink slime? They had the food engineers in there with the exact answer to do it. This is a key thing. It worked across a broadcast. It worked across different elements of kind of documentary. But the most interesting part was the Facebook bit, and the most interesting part was because McDonald's got the right people from within the organization in real time to answer real questions. And that was very, very bold, kind of scary for any big brand to do, but they did it by listening and learning. Stand for something. This, as we spent a day and a half thinking about purpose and debating purpose, surely is what purpose is for a nutshell, and then how you execute on what you stand for. For some companies and brands, it's built in, it's embedded. For Ben & Jerry's, it was an easy one. They've always had a sense of both environmental and social purpose within it, even after they got acquired by Unilever. So for Ben & Jerry's, very easy to take a strong stand on climate change. Not so easy how to communicate that stand to a consumer audience who maybe wasn't really getting their head around Copenhagen. Sometimes the silly little trite things work really well if you know your audience and how they like to get their information. And so when Ben & Jerry's made a very short 15-second animation of Save Our World in ice cream melting, it got its message across very quickly, poignantly, and effectively. Share knowledge. In the workshop earlier about millennials, we heard about Kenco Coffee versus Gangs. It's a really good example of turning what would have been a traditional CSR campaign into a sustainability campaign by working with gangs in, I can't remember now if it was I think it was El Salvador, and training them to work on Kenko's coffee farms and plantations, taking a social cause and turning it into an employment and bringing it back into the community and into the company, sharing the knowledge of the coffee company to create jobs. Inspire behavior change. Food waste, as we know, as we hear time and time again, whichever country in the developed world we live in, is just a huge thing. This is what Sainsbury's did in the UK with its food rescue program, where not only did it create an app with Google to help trace and track how much food you were getting rid of, but it created a whole recipe, content, educational site to retrain British consumers not to throw so much food away and what to do be useful as they used it afterwards. Create a superior product, right? We hear time and time again that people won't buy into sustainability because it asks more of them and it's not such a good product, blah. Bull rubbish, I believe the phrase is. This is Hellmann's mayonnaise. Unilever brand created a new bottle that allowed you to get 25% more mayonnaise out of its bottle than anyone who's ever used a Hellmann's mayonnaise bottle in the past can experience and knows the frustration of that last kind of stuff you can't get out to the bottom. By creating a new bottle, they're able to get more out of it that was useful for the consumer and cut waste dramatically. And, this is important, they were able to tell that story in a very cute, simple, informative infographic that ran across all social networks that got the message across. Lead and educate. On a day where AXA Insurance Company out of France has said it will no longer invest in any tobacco products. What were they doing investing in tobacco products in the first place? Anyway, that's a whole other side story. We have the case of CVS Pharmacy in the US, who was the biggest seller in some states of cigarettes. It made a resolution a year and a half ago that it would cut off an estimated $6 million annually in sales by refusing to sell it because it bet itself that it would get more business coming back in the long run by keeping people alive and not incurring the costs of that. It's been a tough thing for them in terms of stock market and in terms of accountability, but they've stuck to their guns for it to work. Use a product to demonstrate purpose. This is Doritos and Doritos stand, along with, it has to be said, a growing number of big corporations in the United States around what could have been a really divisive issue of lesbian, gay, bi, and transgender rights. It's amazing how so many corporations are driving this in the United States. What Doritos did was really interesting is they created limited edition Doritos packets in the colors of a rainbow. And of course they sold out like hot Doritos, hot cakes, something like that. Challenge business models. This wouldn't be a sustainability presentation if you didn't use Patagonia. I wasn't allowed to do it unless I actually did. Not quite true, but it's a really good way of challenging a business model. And this is Patagonia's kind of worn wear, where basically, as we know, it's challenging the idea of buying more. It's part of this growing movement of putting a premium on quality and reusing and coming with services off the back of it. Inspire employees first. This is Aetna's mindfulness. Mindfulness, if it hasn't hit Spain, is going to be huge. The US is almost over mindfulness, and it's into sleep now as kind of a way of kind of bringing employees, and I could use a bit more of that, but anyway. Aetna embraced mindfulness and made it a program for all of its employees before rolling it out as an offering for clients and customers. And it's been something that came as often from the CEO down, but it's been very successful. Finally, don't be afraid to experiment. A year and a half ago, Samsung released a corporate sustainability report which featured a rapper, a South Korean rapper, rapping actual lyrics from the report. It was an absolute, didn't go down very well. Interestingly, Heineken did exactly the same thing, or the similar type of thing, about 2.5 months ago. But rather than take the whole thing literally, they used a spoken word artist from the Netherlands, and they created basically an artistic interpretation through spoken word and music that interpreted the ideals that Heineken was trying to stand for in terms of sustainability. Actually really interesting and successful, and it's okay to experiment in that way. So what have the best ideas got in common? They back up words with action. When you're doing good work, you've got a good story to tell. If not, no one will trust you. Thank you very much.